In my last video, I gave you 5 different methods that you can use to cross over the threshold, and I explained why my preferred method is keeping my rifle in my shoulders when making entry. In that video, I had my buttstock fully extended and I was wearing my plate carrier so I could make it as difficult as possible on myself for demonstration purposes. This is a 12.7 LWRC and fully extended, it's 31 inches. The threshold at the front door of my house is just over 35 inches, and the threshold in my previous video was just under 35.5 inches, so not much difference. I'll go through all the techniques that I already talked about previously on this threshold, which is just under 31 inches, and then I'll tell you what my main concern is kind of with the other techniques. This threshold, just under 31 inches, that means that my rifle will not fit through the threshold. That doesn't mean that I can't maintain that technique that I like to use, which is having my rifle in my shoulders. It only means that a little bit more of my rifle will be exposed before I have an opportunity to face the potential threat area. So if I have it buttstock fully extended and I wanted to face the threat as soon as possible, a little bit more of my muzzle has to come through in order to give me space to get through the threshold. And so I would end up in a position that's similar to this before I can start going forward. So this is about where my muzzle would be in relation to the wall. Now, if I could collapse my buttstock, that's going to give me more space to work inside of this threshold as I'm coming through, which inherently means that more of my muzzle would be seen by a potential suspect or the threat area, but before I entered the room. And we talk about exposure. Maybe that's a big deal to you, and maybe it isn't. And then we have some of those other techniques, so keeping the rifle in a low ready position as you come through. Low ready position as I'm coming through the threshold, up on target. Now, the issue with that, not really an issue, but in my opinion, kind of potentially wasting you a little bit of time, is that you're not only overcoming the same angle, but you're also having maybe to have to come up on target. Of course, the guy could be sitting down, in which case maybe that's not a big deal. Then you have the short stock position up under the shoulders, over the shoulder. So walking towards the threshold, I still can't keep my rifle sideways to get through this threshold. There's too much room for air there, and we don't want to be hitting our rifle. So what we have to do is either A, maintain the same angle of attack, in which case, again, we're overcoming the same angle, or we end up coming into the room up over the shoulder, but kind of more with our muzzle pointed down. So that would look, if we maintain the same angle of attack up over the shoulder, okay, now we kind of come in this muzzle down scenario here. Again, none of it's really wrong, but my concern with those other techniques is my philosophy and belief is that if there is a bad guy in the room and he is sitting and waiting at the last possible moment that you have as a shooter, as you're moving towards the threshold to engage him, you obviously want to be in a position to do that, but not only engage him, but be finished engaging him to allow the team to come in behind you before you walk through the threshold. So we would like to engage that person, and then by the time we're breaking the threshold, we want to be moving towards the threat area. Now, the good thing about keeping the rifle in your shoulders is that you're not changing anything about your movement, about where your rifle is sitting, and what your responsibilities are. And it's easy to do while you're walking, so I'll walk through each technique. So if we have the rifle in our shoulders and we're walking towards the threshold, bang, off safe, and now we're moving towards the threat area. Now, if we do a low ready position, right, we would be up, right? We would be up trying to face the threat area, then we see him, bang, and then we'd come down, and then we'd come up. Now, if we're doing a short stock position up over the shoulder, again, we should be facing towards the threat area, ready to engage, bang, and then going towards the threat area. The problem is that that's really easy to do when you're going slow, and that's really easy to do when you set up targets for yourself and you are drilling that and training that to see what your speed is to have to engage those targets. However, that becomes very problematic when you have to identify the target and discern whether it's a good guy, a bad guy, or what they're doing. And what will end up happening is really with the other techniques is you will not give yourself enough time, right? Because what you'll do is you'll start moving towards the threshold and you'll start breaking it down soon, maybe too soon, in which case you have a whole step or a step and a half that you still could have covered, but you didn't because you had to break your rifle down to get into the room. Same thing with a low ready position. Moving towards the threshold, it becomes problematic when moving at a speed to decide and see what it is you need to engage, whether it is a good guy or a bad guy, and then come down and then go into the room. And so, in my opinion, if we're passing up an opportunity, if you're in a position first to shoot the bad guy, and that's what needs to happen, then you should make yourself available to do that. And I feel like those other ways of doing it, they do help you get into the room, and whether or not they're a little bit faster to identify the threat area is probably a negligible difference. But the problem comes in when we are giving up the last opportunity to engage somebody that we need to engage when the situation more closely replicates real life. Now I'll demonstrate what I was talking about just walking, how difficult it is to see the target at the last available opportunity, engage that target, and still execute your responsibility in the corner. You saw that I can make it through the threshold on a threshold that is just under 31 inches. I will keep my buttstock fully extended, and I will make this threshold 28 inches. Say for whatever reason I wasn't stepping center or working myself across the threshold and I had to button hook. Could I still maintain that technique having the rifle in my shoulders? And the answer is yes, because I'm still looking for, at the moment in which I'm at the threshold, I'm still looking for executing that same angle of attack. If it looked like I was having trouble with any of that, I normally don't, because my buttstock is usually collapsed somewhat. I only ran it with my buttstock extended to show you that it can still be done, and if you do have a longer gun, then you could try it and see if it works for you. In the end, it's just personal preference, but I just feel like if you're able to keep the rifle in your shoulder, then you don't have to worry about doing anything else, and you can focus on what you should probably be focusing on.